And today we'll be telling you some of the ways that you might already be improvising when things, hopefully, are going right.
We call it Talent Hacks from the Second City. 5 lessons in attracting, onboarding, and developing top talent.
First, a little more history on the Second City, the actual building that we're sitting in. Second City was founded in 1959, and it was created here in Chicago and has since expanded up to Toronto. We create our sketch comedy through the art of improvisation and have been doing that same process for most of our history.
Absolutely. And of course, you know a lot of our alumni. Some were already mentioned. And then there's folks like Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Stephen Colbert, Steve Carell, the whole cast of SCTV, 3 out of 4 Ghostbusters,
Shelley
way back.
Long.
Oh my gosh, Shelley Long, Peter Boyle, Alan Arkin, basically everyone. Everyone you love has been here.
Anyone who's funny, we like to say. And they learned to apply their trade using the art of improvisation. So while they were writing prepared comedy, they created that in collaboration with their audience on stage. And it demanded of them a very particular set of skills. They had to work together seamlessly as an ensemble, build on ideas. We opened the door literally for our audience to shout things out, where in most theater that becomes a downside. For us, that's what we want. We want people to shout things out, and we immediately collaborate with them, incorporate that into the material, and actually build our material, our characters, our scenes on them. So someone like Chris Farley would have developed their characters on our stages using the audience as a sounding board, listening to what works, getting rid of what doesn't get a reaction, and using that audience testing throughout. It also starts to give us a pretty valuable set of tools when we share it with organizations, which we've been doing for about the past 2 decades. And that's taking the tenets of improvisation, everything from that impeccable ability to listen, our approach to working together, to building on ideas, which we call yes and. Those same skills for us have been really valuable to share with other people. And today, we'll show you some of the ways that they overlap with the world of recruiting and retaining talent.
Now you've met Andy and I, and there's someone else here that we're going to introduce you to in just a second. Andy and I are performers, writers, and trainers with Second City Works, and we have with us today an in-house millennial, John Luce. He's going to be interacting with you throughout this entire session.
Hi everyone, I was born in 1996 and I need constant affirmation.
Speaking of which, here's our first chat question. What gets in the way of finding and retaining the best talent? We'd like your opinions and thoughts on this. Now keep it short and sweet, no novels, because, come on now, keep it together. So short and sweet, and go ahead and chat on in and attach that hashtag SCTalentHacks. Get to typing. I want to see some typing.
There we go.
Oh, here we go.
Benefits and compensation for sure.
Right to the heart of the matter.
For us, it's really important to understand our audience before we even get started, and this helps us to know what's top of mind for you.
Ooh, hiring managers? Yeah, absolutely. That one totally comes into play. Oh, salary. Right. It's all about the green. Want to make it rain.
We're working very hard today to get a raise of our own. We're being monitored by our in-house Second City Gestapo, and
there's a camera on us right now.
We're hoping that our performance today is going to get our salary increase.
Absolutely. Oh, someone else has now said location. Location, location, location. I mean, that's how it's said.
The compliance of leaves of absence.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. Oh, overcoming resistance to change.
Our millennial is synthesizing all of these with his millennial skills and texting at the same time, and he's on Facebook.
I feel like he's going to be a better person at the end of this. If anyone's going to grow, it's going to be John.
Laziness and lack of creativity, hopefully on the part of the recruitee and not the recruiter, will assume the best.
Oh, the company culture. Oh, the company has a bad rap.
Great.
Bad rap, y'all. That's another way of saying bad rep, a rep rap. What if they had a rap about reputation? They rapped about their rep.
That might actually be a good thing.
That could maybe be a good thing. That could draw people in. A rep rap.
There we go.
Oh, there's red tape in the hiring process.
Awesome, and we've heard that before. Second City Rachel and I have the privilege of working with Second City across many of our clients, working with applications of the way that we use improvisation and kind of peel back the curtain to show you how we create on stage. Not so that our clients can be improvisers, although sometimes they secretly want to be, but so that they can take the best of that and apply it back to their world. And that's our goal today. Thank you so much for sharing the stuff that frustrates you, that gets in your way, and that challenges you. That helps us to be focused and centered. And we take you now to our first talent hack, and that is stop, collaborate, and listen.
Oh, I think I'm going to lead the charge forward on this one.
No, I think that Rachel, if you can hold on for just a second, please.
Well, I had some really thoughts.
I know that you have some thoughts. You're always having thoughts. You don't have a filter, really. You really don't have a filter.
Well, but it's not about having a filter.
I don't need to think about your dream journal. Okay, no,
I think it's an important thing. Some of my best ideas come from my
Sorry, I'm sorry.
This is from my brain.
Just let me go ahead and get my.
I write them down.
All right.
Clearly, listening is important, right? And it's especially important for improvisers. Now, on stage, we know that we are, in fact, building something together. And if we're not listening to each other, we're just getting in each other's way. We don't work with a script ever. So we only have the content that each person is contributing. Our audience is also a big part of that ensemble. We create an atmosphere together that's all about communication, and that allows everybody to contribute, the actors on stage and the audience. And we have to listen closely for what each entity is contributing in order to connect. So that audience, they're going to tell us very quickly if they do not buy what we're selling, and they're going to tell us with their deafening silence.
It might seem counterintuitive that the most successful improvisers aren't necessarily the ones who are the wittiest, the wisest, or the fastest on their feet. They're actually the ones who are the most adept at listening to what their partner gives them and being truly open to that, and even listening to what the audience gives. It's a huge pleasure for the audience to shout something out, and it might seem immediately to be disruptive, but an improviser who can immediately acknowledge that and adapt and incorporate actually gains an amazing amount of power in the scene.
And it also makes all of our performances absolutely one of a kind. We can't create them again because each one of them is just built off unique material.
We also see this resonating for many of our clients in a face-to-face manner, and we're probably preaching to the choir here. In the recruiting process, that ability to listen not only gives you great information about the person that you're interviewing, as well as their ability to listen or not, but it also helps you to continually to map the message back to them. We find that one of the pieces that sometimes falls out is listening to the landscape as the talent pool changes, the messages that you put out there on social media or the listings, your ability to constantly be updating so that your audience is able to reach it, and you're reaching the audience when and where they need. For us, for Second City, we've had to listen to our audiences. We're pretty much doing the same thing we've been doing since 1959, sketch comedy. The lights come up, you see a short comedic scene, almost like what you might see on Saturday Night Live. The lights go down. That happens again and again for 2 hours. And that format in general has stayed the same. It's only through our ability to listen to the audience that we're able to keep that format fresh, that we're able to keep the critics coming back and giving us good reviews, which helps us to get behinds in seats. And in that way, in that respect, I think that we share a lot in common with recruiters. We're trying to get the right behinds in the right seats, so our company doesn't fall behind. That's professional. I'm sorry. It's professional comedy, ladies and gentlemen.
Is it?
So in addition to within any interaction, whether it's an interview or a scene on stage, keeping it as a dialogue, that ability to continually be open and listening and learning about the person that you're working with, that's one of the things that we find helps us to succeed on stage, as well as listening to the environment, the landscape of how people need to be communicated with.
Absolutely. And the more you listen and react to those changing needs, the better you're going to be able to map the story. Andy, that leads us to talent hack number 2.
Know your story, Morning Glory. Great. We actually want to start off by hearing from you. First, most people wouldn't think of Second City as storytellers, but we think of ourselves exactly as that. We're telling stories on stage. And we think that you're also telling stories. You're telling the story of your corporation and organization to attract great talent. And then once they land in your company, you're also telling that story so they can understand the culture and so that they can take on that story and make it their own as well. So we'd love to hear from you based on our short list. We're going to do a poll. We'd love to hear what makes a great story. What makes a great story? So we're going to switch over to a poll here.
Oh, there it is.
So what makes a great story for you? Emotion, the right hero, twists and turns, or a little bit of structure?
I'm wondering how I would answer this.
I think structure. My OCD would
True.
lean
Gotta
me
know
towards
where things are
structure.
going.
Or emotion, the other side of my
What about a
personality.
hero? A good hero's journey. Like, oh, that hero wondering, I want a cheeseburger. Can I get it?
All right, make sure that you voted. Vote just once. Although we're in Chicago, I would imagine that most of you aren't, so you can only vote once. You can't take on the
If you're
Chicago.
local,
Then vote as many times as you'd like. Hire your brother for an important government position.
Yep.
It's the Chicago way, ladies and gentlemen.
Gotta make it happen. I mean, if you want something, just vote a lot.
All right, we'd love to hear what you think makes a great story. The poll has
Right.
closed.
Oh, there it is.
Twists
and turns.
Wow, that's a real twist and turn.
That is a twist and turn. Because we did bits about the other three.
We thought that any of them would win but that.
But twists and turns, but the people have spoken.
It's actually a good reminder for us. We often think we know the way that an audience needs to hear a message, and we think that we have often we'll laugh about something backstage. We put it on stage to test it for an audience, and it does not get the laughs we expect. In fact, you might see tumbleweeds going by.
Yeah, sometimes we think something is amazing, and then the audience really lets us know.
When we open ourselves up to listen to our audience, we're often surprised by the twists and turns that they actually give us. And for us, all those things are important in the stories we tell. We need to have variety. We need to have emotion. Certainly, we're trying to connect with our audience. We love to have the right hero, somebody that people can relate to. But the thing that probably is most important overall is the ability to adapt and map the message to any audience. The story that I tell to an audience in Chicago may not always play in Poughkeepsie.
Oh, which is, I had to look that up how to spell it, by the way.
There's a lot of extra
I encourage all
vowels.
of you to Google it. Or you're staring at it right now. So there you go. So you know what? We have this great thing here. We have 2 resident stages here in Chicago and also 1 in Toronto. And we create tons and tons of original material. And then our touring companies are often able to take that on the road all across the United States, all around the world, on Norwegian cruise lines, or everywhere. We might be in your house right now. And they get to take those scenes anywhere. However, sometimes there's a scene that is a little too specific. And there's one from our archives called Bike Cops. It's 2 bike cops hanging around, having a conversation, having a Starbucks, and they're just talking about all the stuff that goes on right here in Chicago. There's a lot of Chicago references that really only locals and maybe tourists are going to get. So that's going to be tough for that to play as well out in the middle of Iowa or off in Portland, either one.
Or Poughkeepsie.
Or Poughkeepsie, the Portland of Poughkeepsie. But you know what? Bike Cops is a really great scene. It's super funny. It's engaging. It's just a blast to watch. So if a touring company wants to take that scene out on the road, the actors can actually do a bit of research before they get to a particular city, and they can then make some strong local references that are going to hit with that crowd and that audience of people. So if it's a college town, they can reference, the favorite pizza joint, the hangout, the school mascot, maybe the rival, landmarks around campus, stuff that's happening right then and there. And if it's Philadelphia, they can talk about cheesesteaks and mummers, the Liberty Bell, Rocky running up the museum stairs. We have that ability to tailor our material so that it gets the biggest payoff possible, depending on who's listening.
Now, you find yourself selling something probably a little bit more than a couple comedic characters and short shorts. You're selling a corporation, a corporate culture, a career track. And so we know that you also, again, we're preaching to the choir here a bit. We know that the story needs to be adapted, that you're working to embed great people into a culture, and for that it takes a very carefully adapted story. It goes back to that listening that we talked to at the very start. You're already asking the right questions to be able to tailor that story in the moment. You've been monitoring the landscape in order to change the way that you tell that story. What works in January of a specific year might not even work by the summertime. It may need a very different way of telling that same core story. And while the corporate values don't necessarily change, the way that you can connect to a changing marketplace of from the Gen Xers down to the millennials, because we know that what plays for the Gen Xers doesn't always necessarily attract the millennials.
What was that? I was just texting.
He truly was texting. Our in-house millennial was texting. When you want to make the story engaging, you have to make sure that you're finding different ways to do it and using that creativity. We love getting creative around that. Working with some of our corporate clients, we've had a lot of different challenging situations where we have to take a messaging and make it work for the different audiences. And we, again, start with that ability to listen. What we think might be funny to people that are a sales group, for example, may not actually be funny to them. It really takes kind of getting in the mix with them, putting ourselves in their shoes. We want to show you an example of one of the places where we had to learn to put ourselves in the shoes of an audience to tell that story. We were charged with using our stage process. We're pretty reverent about that process of working with an audience and using that around some leadership training specifics. And we wanted to talk mostly about feedback, giving feedback, how to give feedback, and having leaders think in terms of some of the things that they might be weak on. So we actually brought some of those leaders into the room. We worked with people who were in learning and development, as well as some of the leaders who were going to be trained to discover how the message needed to reach them. It was important for us not to preach and not to feel as though we were imposing it, but we were actually recognizing the challenges that they face, the mindset that they might have, and present it in an engaging way. So we're going to give you a clip of how we actually were to present this story, and this is a scene that we created around feedback called Feedback Zombies. We'll go ahead and roll that clip.
What are you talking about? Just look. What are they? They used to be your staff. Now they're underutilized and undermotivated because they haven't gotten any advice. Do something!
I don't know, Jackie. Being an advisor can be tough. What if what I say doesn't inspire them?
You don't have a choice. Senior management is a speaking role. You need to provide feedback or your talent won't grow. They'll just turn into that.
Advise me. I understand. I'm just afraid of possibly saying something that might hurt someone's feelings or say the wrong thing. We have a good team. I think things will work themselves out. Don't you, Jackie? Jackie?
Advise me.
No!
Hopefully you're laughing. Are you laughing?
Or just creeped out.
I was laughing. A little creepy. It was a creepy laugh. We were laughing creepy laughs. So you know what? We are so lucky to have a great ensemble of talent who are actually drawn to our particular creative environment. On stage and off, we really try to support each other so that each of us is willing to take risks. We kind of know that, you know, we can take a idea that might seem super small and throw it out there, and one of our creative team might help it blossom and give it wings and turn it into something huge, which, Andy, that brings us to our next talent hack.
Say, got your back. This is a very profound phrase at Second City that has a lot of resonance for us.
Huge.
This week, in fact, in the training center at Second City, where we train in improvisation and sketch comedy writing, musical improv, and performance, we're welcoming several hundred brand new students. And we try to set up the classroom so that when they step in, we recognize that people are pretty nervous. They're coming to the world famous Second City. They have a lot of expectations. Some of them want to be the next Tina Fey. Some of them have just been bamboozled into classes by a gift certificate from their husband or wife. But nonetheless, they have a lot of fear coming in. So we really set up a situation that is very much got your back. The way the teacher greets them, the way that they're greeted, even walking up the stairs, the placement of directions of how to get through our labyrinthine system of back alleys in our building. Everything is helping people know that we've got their back. And by the end of that first 3-hour class, for example, a beginning improvisation class, people truly know that the design is set up so that everyone else is in the class is a part of the ensemble, making you look good. We take this phrase of got your back very seriously. And even our professional performers continue this spirit. Before we ever step on stage for any show, we always turn to each other and say, got your back. It's one of those things that helps to center us, to remind ourselves that you can't fail because everyone else is going to make sure that you're looking great and that you succeed.
Absolutely. And how can you convey the same sense of support to a talented candidate or a new hire learning their way at your company? Got Your Back helps you to sell your company's culture. When you can convey a sense of support, you're selling your company's culture and letting them know it's worth making that leap. You know, they can start getting that idea of what their day-to-day work experience might be like, what is the actuality of the risk they might be taking. Got Your Back can also make onboarding less lonely. The very loneliest time in a job is in that first month. It can also be a time where you might start second-guessing that decision. You know, folks are still settling in. They don't necessarily have their go-to work routine or their pals yet, and they're still finding their feet on how this is going to end up working.
We feel that Got Your Back is one of those things that we're just articulating something that probably is part and parcel of the culture already. But we'd love to hear some of the ways that you show this sense of got your back. How do you let people know that you're a corporation that's going to help them to succeed and put them in a position where they're really empowered? And once they start, how do you, during the onboarding process, help them know that you have their back, that you're willing to let them take the risks to kind of go through that difficult and choppy water of the first 3 to 6 months? So we'd love to hear the ways that you already show got your back.
Yeah, chat it in. We would like to know.
Chat us up.
Oh, did you know that Beethoven used to tell his audience, got your back?
Did that come from our millennial?
It did, John. Oh, thinking of you, emails and texts. Absolutely, just that little notice of, hey, I know what you're going through.
Don't go too far. That could be creepy.
It could be creepy, but it's always good for people to point out, hey, I once was in your shoes.
Open door policy for managers. Absolutely. Those lines of communication are kind of set in the first few months.
Oh, I really love this one. Provide a map of local places to eat. You know me. You get me. I'm going to feel at home if I know there's food nearby. And I want the opinion of everybody now just to tell me what food is worthwhile and what's not worth my time.
At Second City, it'd be nice to get a map when you're first here.
Oh, just a map where of who's at what desk, and you're meeting so many different people. I would love a map where every desk is filled in with a name so I could figure that out. Oh, there's a 90-day buddy check. Oh, and a check-in every 30 days for the first year. Wow, that's fantastic. Like a constant touchstone of how's it going.
Offering to meet up for lunch.
Ding, 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 ding. Speaking of food.
Yeah, a lot of food ones here.
Well,
food really makes for community.
I think they get me.
Well,
I think they know.
They're targeting their audience, Rachel.
Yeah, I'm their audience, so I think they get me. Speaking of lunch, who would like to move forward to our fourth talent hack?
I do. Say yes and in every language.
Yes, and. You'll notice there's a yes, comma, and. What is that? You know what? It's a way that you can take information, you can acknowledge information from someone else and build on it. It's actually the golden rule of improvisation. We don't just walk around saying yes and, yes and, yes and, but it's constantly, it's the voice in the back of our minds all the time that helps drive us forward, helps us ensure that we're collaborating with one another, that we're really others focused, making the other person look great. It allows us to take any idea, and see what might come of it in the moment. You know, there's magic in acknowledging an idea and building on it. So yes, and acknowledging, building. It's not about negotiating whether or not an idea is good enough, which really can just run into a lot of wasted time, hurt feelings. Am I right? Am I right? It's about validating and exploring any option.
Whenever we step on stage, we geek out on this feeling of yes and. You can actually Google it online if you're a millennial doing multiple things at the same time,
Yeah.
and see that there are hundreds of websites actually dedicated to this improvisational philosophy of yes and. We'll kind of give you a sense of how it works. We're going to yes and in front of you right now.
Wait for it.
So let's create.
It's gonna happen.
Let's create a superhero, Rachel.
Oh, I like that.
All right. So this is Yes and Man.
All right. I like Yes and Man. And Yes and Man certainly needs a cape.
Ooh. Okay. Yes and Man has on some squirrel shoes.
Oh, Yes and Man has huge muscles.
Perfect, to be expected. Maybe slightly less expected. Yes and Man has wombat ears, the ears of a wombat.
Oh, maybe less expected, but no less appreciated.
So that's how we use yes and
Absolutely.
to take any idea and build on it. We find that it often requires that we set aside our agenda and even let that idea go out in some strange way. If you've ever been through a functional brainstorming as opposed to a dysfunctional one, you've probably been using this sense of yes and. Any idea that's put out is built upon. You find an abundance of different ideas. The group is willing to go deep on any one idea. Whenever we're counseling people on structuring their brainstormings, we try to make this time for yes and as powerful and concise as possible. As many ideas and truly saying yes and. We know that it's important to have a time for editing those ideas down, but even when we're putting our stage shows together, we'll probably have 100+ possibilities. We say yes and to everything. And then in the final throes, when that show is coming together, we start to say no. But the magic that's happened is because every idea was acknowledged and built on early on in the process, the entire group, the ensemble, is much more able to go through that process of editing. Everyone's been heard. And we've discovered that that's also an incredibly basic human desire, is to simply be heard. And yes, and not only as a framework for communication allows for that to happen, but it allows a conversation to move forward. Certainly in a great interview that kind of has a dialogue and a life and a spark of its own, this sense of yes, and is happening. That acknowledgement of the other person's perspective or challenge or question or concern in taking this job, and the ability to use and to build on that, to build a bridge that shows that you truly and authentically understand.
Absolutely. You know, research shows that the brain cannot maintain a high level of function and achievement in a negative emotional environment. And that's why we drive yes and so much. We really realize that yes is so much more fruitful towards forward momentum. There are a couple ways of looking at no. No is often manifested in a physical environment. You can all picture a workplace that works against collaboration. You know what? It's not set up for people to be able to grow and build and have a good thought process. And a talented recruit on a company tour can absolutely see that as well. And then on a personal level, no sometimes sneaks up on us in how we hold our body language, what we're doing with our face, our posture, and that can be read either from a recruiter or even the recruitee. So we have to be very aware of, is your brow furrowed? Are you scrunching your face? Are you thinking too much? Are you perhaps folding your arms in what you might think is a really comfortable fashion, but instead it ends up looking like you're super closed off? So you need to make sure that as a recruitee, you're going in with an open frame. And certainly as a recruiter, you need to make sure that you are there and present for each particular candidate. And if one goes great or not so well, you really endeavor to reset between interviews so that each new candidate is getting your very best in that situation.
You have the onus of being kind of the face of the brand being the company. So the way that people perceive you, the way that they're treated in that conversation starts to say a lot. They're mapping the story about the company based on how they interact with you. So they'll start to pull away this feeling of yes and when you're able to exhibit that physically in the conversation, building on their concerns. And also, I would imagine that you're also listening for the same from them. What company wouldn't benefit from someone who has a mastery of this sense of yes and? That ability to kind of be knocked down with feedback and come right back up again with more ideas. That ability to constantly stay positive. We find that when we look for that in the performers that we recruit, then we start to find the next Tina Feys and the next Stephen Colbert's. Those were people that really had that sense of yes and you've kind of seen it in the way that they've been able to navigate across many different chapters in their own careers. And they're really taking it back to that ability to improvise. And improvisation for us goes back to this yes and. So if nothing else from today is take on that sense of yes and. We are pretty reverent about it to the point where we've even written a book recently entitled Yes And. And for us, that just becomes kind of a snapshot of what we've noticed. We know that a lot of companies are already using yes and in a lot of different great ways, maybe just not articulating as such. But we know that they're using this. You walk into the building and you already feel a sense of yes and. My ideas are going to be built upon. You talk with anyone about that company and you feel this sense of yes and. And you also have people that are attracted there because they know that they'll be able to throw out ideas, and even if that idea fails, there's still an opportunity to have it listened to. And I would warrant that we could walk into any corporation and do a training there around improvisational skills, and we could see within a couple hours the way that environment works. We can feel the companies that have this sense of yes and. Companies where ideas are welcomed, where they have channels in place, where people feel like they're heard. And we can also, unfortunately, feel those companies where that's not the case.
You know what? I want to hear what they have to say about it.
Great. We would love to hear from you. What makes a yes and organization? Go ahead and chat those in. Use that chat function. Tell us what makes, how can yes and help your recruiting and retention of extraordinary talent? We imagine that you're probably doing these things already. We're just giving a new label to it.
Do you remember any things that bubbled up for you, like when you were first joining this family?
The SecondCity family?
The SecondCity family, where there's some like, oh, that'd be a great place to be.
Well, I think that even if you walk, we're standing across from the offices for the training center, and the ability they have an open office in the training center.
That's right.
It's not the case throughout the building, but in the training center they do. So you can be on the phone with a troubled student, and you immediately can turn to the person sitting next to you, and suddenly you have a task force that's working with you.
That's true.
I've never been in such an extraordinary environment.
Oh, someone writes in, it allows for creative, oh, it went away. I can't read it now, but there's training to the task and training for growth. That's another one. Retention, oh, there we go. Creative thoughts to existing processes. See, that's cool. It's new eyes on things that, oh, hey, maybe we could try it this way. So people have to be open to that. Or for job retention.
Oh, I love that. How can we help them do their job better? Put a little bit of the
right.
onus on them to be able to yes and their own path.
Absolutely. That earlier one isn't easy, though, when you have fresh eyes on something, like maybe things that have been in place for a long time and someone new comes in, and it's super easy to kind of have that feeling of like, oh, just wait till you've been here a while. So I sound like an old man all of a sudden. Ooh. Oh, you can be implementing ideas. Absolutely. You can be trying new things all the time.
The millennial thinks that these are great. The millennial is very inspired.
Well, it really boils down to his happiness.
The millennials will rule the future,
They
so
will.
we might as well make them happy
We
now.
might as well. Absolutely.
So if it feels as though we are a little reverent about yes and, it's because we are.
We are.
We think that it's an incredibly powerful concept, and we feel that it's incredibly powerful in the ideation phase, and that it's incredibly powerful through communication itself. And this brings us back to to our final talent hack, and that kind of looks at the other side of yes and, that no piece, the need to edit, the need to balance out wild ideation with numbers and metrics and analytics.
Oh, numbers and metrics.
All that stuff that measures reality. And so our final talent hack is it's not all a numbers game.
Humanize your analytics. Hi there. You know what? The Second City has always been this marriage of numbers folks and creative folks. They have to work in balance one another. You know, if one gets too strong or too weak, the whole business seems to weaken. Like people who recruit, we need to get butts in seats, like Andy mentioned earlier. And you know what? Sometimes the great thinkers are also the outliers, the unexpected person that suddenly comes in and just crushes it. And here at the Second City, we have this fairly well time-tested succession plan of how an actor can move from our classes, perhaps to a house team, to a touring company, and then perhaps onto one of our stages, either the main stage or the ETC, and then perhaps they get an audition and they find their way onto Saturday Night Live. But there's always an exception to that rule. And the wonderful, beautiful Adie Bryant is one such actor because she managed to leapfrog almost every one of those typical steps. She didn't fit into the mold physically or style-wise. She was a lot younger than some of the more seasoned actors who'd been around a while. But you know what? She was lucky enough to have people set aside those analytics of how things were supposed to work and who was supposed to fit to see her particular skill set. She had this great, unique point of view. She was killing it in all the shows she was doing all over town. She was just bubbly, delightful, hilarious, quirky. People were always talking about her. And when she did shows, she always seemed to stand out. And now she's on Saturday Night Live.
We find that the metrics require a lot of creative thinking to unlock the data. We know that in your particular worlds, the metrics and analytics are becoming more and more powerful. They're starting to take some of the guesswork out of things, and that's for the better. We also know that the kind of skill and human-to-human acumen that you exhibited to even be hired in your capacity probably still has a place at the table in order to humanize those metrics. Maybe it's just to find that one person who really is outside of the metrics but who could really succeed. But on paper, they look like a huge risk. And maybe that's a moment of yes and to take that risk, or to have the conversations to enroll the rest of the organization into pulling that person in. We find that that skill will always be the pieces that are able to balance it out, balance the numbers and the people themselves. We find that we are often tasked with humanizing the analytics in such a way. For example, a company might come to us with some metric insight around a brand, and they ask Second City to help them to connect with their consumers. So create kind of a focus group that takes those metrics, takes those insights that are numbers-based, and provides the emotional insight to them. And we've found a lot of success in terms of putting our improvisers into the same room with these consumer groups, taking those hunches that were led by the metrics, and actually improvising to find that deeper level. And so that is able to, that gives us an ability to find that second layer, to find that emotional side. And so we are advocates for continuing to keep the balance between the advances in terms of metrics and analytics with that human hunch.
You know what? We'd like to show you how all of these perspectives work in our world. We'd like to improvise for you. So we've got some quotes for you that we would like you to vote upon.
So this is replicating our audience suggestion phase of an improv show.
Yeah, which we literally have a group of humans yelling things at us, which really is great for my self-esteem.
So you need to choose the first line of our scene. We're going to put our money where our mouth is and improvise, but we need the suggestions from you. So these are quotes from horrible interviews gone awry. Whether it's the interviewer or the interviewee, these are some of the worst quotes that we could imagine from an interview. So these will be, whatever one you choose will become the first line of our scene. We'll have to take on the challenge of using it. So vote for one. What does your company do again? Second one is, how many days off will I get in the first year? And then for the interviewer, if you could change faces with anybody, whose face would you want? And finally, on a scale of 1 to awesome, how hard do you work? So vote for one.
So basically, a Nicolas Cage movie. And others that are really the premises of any 1980s comedy sitcom.
All right, the votes are
they're
coming in.
They're tallying in, they're coming in. I mean, we're excited.
We are very
So we're
excited.
starting our scene with this line of dialogue. Where it will go, no one is to know.
All right, let's see the results. You have selected, what did your company do again?
Nice, 35%.
I wonder if that resonated with reality.
Great, so we need a few other little snippets of information.
Yeah, your work is not done yet. You still have to keep on giving us suggestions to guide our scene.
Absolutely. We would like you to choose an emotion. You've got 4 to choose from. Angry, suspicious, euphoria, sarcastic. Sarcastic?
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 She's saying it sarcastically.
Euphoria, suspicious, angry. Which one of these would you like to have us set the tone of our improvisation?
Perhaps an emotion that you felt today, yesterday, or an emotion that you wish you would feel more.
Maybe.
Maybe you're just a really good person.
I mean, I don't know you. I don't know you. There's no judgment here.
Maybe you need to be a little more angry.
Maybe you need
sometimes.
to like bring that out a little bit.
You need to explore that anger.
Maybe you're sarcastic and you don't know it. I think they're voting. I'm very excited. What are they going to choose? Andy. Oh, voting is closed. Oh, it's a close one. Sarcastic. It's so close. I feel like we somehow need to have a marriage of euphoric sarcasm.
Great. I think we'll take both euphoria and sarcastic. Good work, people. You couldn't even decide. I'm being sarcastic. It's professional acting. All right, your work is almost done, and then we have to go to work. So the final poll question is for the location for our improvisation. We have a cruise ship, a dentist office, the factory floor. You can imagine a factory of any sort, makes whatever you want, or a restaurant.
Where do you want this whole shebang to take place? Andy and I both actually worked on cruise ships. I occasionally have been in a dentist's office. I saw a factory floor in Footloose, and I think it's pretty clear that I know my way around a restaurant. So really, any of these will be my wheelhouse.
You had so many food references today, Rachel. You've been very. Did you have breakfast?
I did. I had a wrap. Back to the rep wrap.
The rep wrap.
It was a wrap.
Did you have a rep wrap?
It was an egg wrap. With a little bit of cheese.
Awesome. The votes are coming in.
I'm very excited. Very excited.
Vote powerfully. Vote often.
That wrap was missing? That wrap was missing some Canadian bacon. Because that's the healthy protein choice. You know, bacon, though. I wanted bacon, but I went Canadian.
Well.
I'm never, ever going to use that phrase in anything else. Dentist's office.
Oh, everyone needs to make a dental appointment, so it's weighing on your conscience. Awesome.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's recap. We are going to start our scene off with, what does your company do again? The emotion that will drive us will be the pairing of euphoria and sarcasm. And this whole thing is going to take place somehow in a dentist's office. So we take you now to this dental office.
So what does your company do again?
We make those things that the stuff that you put in your mouth and you bite into it, and it makes the molds of where your teeth are and go.
Oh, all right.
It's that gelatinous.
You know, we already have a gelatinous stuff we buy from another sales rep.
Oh, no. You want our gelatinous stuff. It's flavored.
I'm sorry. I'm working on a patient right now. Just stay still. Spit.
Here, I'm going to give you my iPad. You can watch Downton Abbey.
Well, that's very nice of you.
Thank you. I'm classy.
Well, I cannot say that I am happy that you visited me during a patient encounter.
Well, I, on the other hand, am really thrilled to have so many new friends in one room.
I don't know if I count us as friends quite yet. You have not won my business.
Ah,
How is this better from my competitor's gelatinous goo?
well, let's get started by making a list.
Are-
I love lists.
Excuse me, you're whiteboarding on my wall. That's
Yep.
not a whiteboard.
Okay, well, I'm gonna write on your patient then.
Oh, well,
He's got a huge back. It's a lot of room to write on.
he is a larger fellow.
He is.
I'll allow it.
That's a good thing.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Ours are flavored, but not fruity. They're flavored
What
like,
flavors do you have?
well, pepperoni flavor, and of course the best one, kale.
You have pepperoni and kale flavored goo?
Yes, so that you can do something that's good for you by doing what you really want to do.
All right, I think that would appeal to a very select type of clientele. I'm not sure if that's an overlap with the clientele that I entertain here. Pepperoni? Yes. Kale? I don't know.
Well, okay, back to the drawing board. How about sawdust and sea salt?
Are you spitballing different flavors?
Really pulling this out of my fanny.
Well, can you customize flavors of your gelatinous dental goo?
We can do whatever you want.
I think that you're just telling me what I want to hear.
I am like, you can see through me like smoke.
Where'd you get your sales training?
I'm a phoenix. I went to school online.
Oh, to sales training online?
Yes, I didn't get a whole lot of human interaction, so maybe that's why it's a little rough.
I'll tell you
around the
what.
edges.
I'm not a big fan of your product or your sales tactics. I do like your creativity. I'm looking for a front desk person to redesign the lobby.
I would love that. And you know what? I don't even want you to pay me in money. I want you to pay me in dental care. I'm 82 years old and I've never seen a dentist.
You look real tight for 82.
I keep it real.
All right.
I eat that kale.
Just do me a favor. Take that college off your resume and you got a job.
Done. And
scene.
I think that was some of my best work.
I just was at the dentist last week, so I really
Yeah.
pulled from reality there.
I don't want anyone to know the last time I was at a dentist.
Actors are not responsible with health care maintenance.
But I do have it. I have health care, so that's part of the battle.
Well, thank you very much for those suggestions. You guided us along. So if you liked it, it was because of you. If not, well, we blame you. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up now. So thank you for joining us today. At Second City, for us, everything starts with listening. Everything starts with that ability to put the audience first. The suggestion comes, and we take that suggestion, and we also look to see constantly and ongoingly, moment to moment, how is that reaching the audience? Are they taking it, or do we need to shift directions?
Absolutely. You need to make sure that you're customizing your story to make sure that it's authentic to you and that you're coming across in a genuine manner.
And that's constantly readapted to a changing audience as it goes from the Gen Xers down to the millennials and to whatever comes next, as your company's story is able to change and adapt and connect and reach them in the way that they need to be reached. And in that sense of yes and, for us, this is our guiding light, and we love to see the many ways that this resonates. We love to have heard how it resonates for you as well, and how you're already using this sense of yes and, perhaps without even using the words yes and, but how that lets people that are looking at your company or starting at that company know that you've really got their back.
Absolutely. It's all about having that safe environment for people to take risks. And it's important for us to really make sure that we're not putting our own idea of what risk is on everyone else. You know, my idea of risk is, you know, hey, I'm gonna jump off the Sears Tower with a parachute and paraglide down. I'm not sure that those two things go together. That seems like a huge risk, but for other people, a risk might be as simple as raising their hand in a meeting and contributing something for the very first time.
And speaking of risk, as you're minimizing your risk using the new tools for analytics in terms of talent acquisition and retention, to making sure that you still have inroads to use those amazing human instincts and the skills that have made you who you are already and help to build the company, that you're still bringing that human ability to have the numbers balanced out by the art and
Absolutely.
the creativity.
It's not always about looking at a candidate as to why they might not work, but looking at why they might work.
It's another way of saying yes and.
Fantastic. Do you have any questions?
That brings us to the end. We're going to turn it back to our host to field any questions that you might have for us. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Second City. We'd love to field any of your questions.
Yeah, so that was awesome, first and foremost, and we've been getting a lot of good responses. So just I guess in terms of a few of the questions I've been asked follow this theme, how do you manage to do all this when almost all of your work is heavily scripted? So you're being told what to say, more or less.
Oh, in terms of an interview situation?
Yes, yeah, exactly. How do you bring some of this you're talking about and keep that standard while at the same time having the flexibility to adjust?
Sure, like when you're having to follow a particular agenda?
Correct.
I think that we work a lot with sales teams as well, and so often they really are following, for example, a call center might be following a very particular and set script. So that ability to use yes and to be authentic comes in not necessarily in the words that you say, but in the way that you say them. So it might be the nonverbals, it might be the way that you're opening yourself up, it might be the way that you're acknowledging and mirroring another person that's across the table from you, and maybe even not putting them across the table from you. Or finding the best way to interact with them. And if that is over the phone, then the use of your voice, we think the voice really conveys so much of the empathy that we can convey, especially when we're moving along kind of a set path.
Okay, great. You know, I think that this is a good question. Does this concept translate globally, or is this something that you think works best in North America markets?
I can take that one actually, because actually both of us have, we've done quite a lot of work overseas throughout Europe. Andy was recently in Japan, and this is really a resounding global idea of possibility, of discovery, of incorporation, of not having to do all of the work on your own, and also like kind of like embracing the idea that you could do a lot of the legwork on something and then realize that once it gets other eyes on it, it's not finished. It still has room to bloom and grow.
We think that certainly yes and as a framework works really well globally. The words yes are used in different ways, and different cultures will actually say yes or no, or even shake or nod their heads in different ways as well. So we go back to kind of the building blocks of it, acknowledging an idea or a perspective and building from there. That piece is universal, even if the words yes and translated specifically into another language may not be appropriate or may not be what you're going to hear from the other person.
Yeah, it really is about acknowledging information and agreeing to build on that information.
Awesome. So in the interest of time, as we wrap up, again, you know,